Composer Gloves here, and today we're going to talk about pad sounds. Pad sounds are sounds that you use to pad your song. They are things that fill up space. They can add textures and ambience to it. What I like to do is I create a bunch of different sort of pad type sounds, and then I'll morph between them using volume automation. So I'll layer my pad sounds, and then I'll morph between them. Other times they're just used as reinforcement. Sometimes people will automate volume on them and chop them and create sort of an arpeggio type deal. Like pegboard nerds does that quite a bit. A lot of people do that. It's a very common technique. And then there's also there's one more thing I wanted to say. Oh yeah, pad sounds can also be a terrible idea sometimes if you have a track that's got a lot of sharp things and you're just like it's missing that one element. So you're like maybe a pad sound will fix it. Most of the time you'll find out that doesn't quite work out. At least that's been my experience. So let's come over here to a new FL and let's just make a pad sound in Harmor real fast. So okay. Pad sound 101. Pad sounds are long. They morph and change. So we need to create parameters and organize them in a way that will, spread themselves out. So one way we could do that is via a very long volume envelope. We could do something like move our release way. Oh, you know what? I don't want the release. We're going to have a nice release. I'm going to delete the release for now and just have it like that. I'm keeping my sustain in there. That way when I let go, it just disappears. Now, I'll add a release at the very end, but when I'm manipulating my volume envelope, it's just more convenient for me to do something like this. And I'll have a bit of a steeper rise. This stuff you could do nowadays with these is just ridiculous. And so one thing you want to be aware of when you're doing a pad sound is when you have your volumes coming up, later on, you're going to want to be able to, if you're going to start at 0 like this, if you want it to come from nothing instead of, or you want it to rise faster like I'm doing, your peak is going to get really, really loud. And if you want it to settle out and level, you could sort of make it so it'll do that here. And then later on, you could just bring it up or down. So you're creating a pocket. It's basically compression. You're creating a pocket to move it around in as opposed to putting it all the way at the max. It's not the best idea to have your envelope way out there. So I'm going to run with this envelope. It's got a nice feel to it. And then, as you can see, all I need to do is just turn it up. And I can control that volume. Now, ideally, you're going to be mixing at a lower volume anyway, so it won't be an issue of it being too soft. You're just going to mix it later, so it'll be fine. So, okay. Now, let's, a pad sound usually has a nice... And this is one where I'd use a phaser. Turn it on about like halfway. And let's create an interesting phaser shape. Phaser mix. Let's automate the mix in and out. What the heck? Let's do that. I could do this with an LFO, but I'm just going to make it a big envelope. What the heck? And now on the filter, this is one where filter envelopes could be very useful. So let's go over to our filter. So, okay, now filtering here plays a big role. You could do crude, a high pass, band pass, low pass. These all have super specific feels to them. Another interesting option in Harmor is you could do an EQ curve and then morph your EQ curve in and out. There's some curious things. I'm going to add some reverb at this point because I already know I'm going to want it quite a bit. Turn the size up. And okay, so that's pretty nice right there. We could combine the EQ moves with our filter. So pads are really an art that I like. I really like using pads because you can just create these super sort of atmospheric, majestic things out of them. You go C. And they're just so nice. It's just people oftentimes just sort of select a pad and leave it in their track, and I do that sometimes, but it's really an opportunity to really dig into sort of the subtleties of the background of what's going on in your track. So let's do something like this, and then we'll go down to F. So right now, let's add. Now let's move the filters around. So I'm going to create an automation clip. I'm also going to, oh, I cannot automate this. I regret what I said earlier. You can't even do that. So what would be the workaround for this? Well, the other option would be to open up an EQ inside, then just in post and automate that, which you can do. So. Turn the reverb up. Let's add a delay. With delays that are this long, they'll be very transparent. It will just sort of add to our morphing as we're morphing in and out. Now we could try moving this with a band pass. That'll be interesting. You can hear all the different tones. Sort of got an organ texture going on. So let's come in here and change our timbre some. Gonna go to multiply. So that's really nice. It's kind of a nice sound, kind of nice pad. Some people probably want some more sudden changes. So let's make another pad. This time let's utilize Harmer's amazing sampling unit. Da, 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 da. That's pretty much the idea behind pads. So you can take anything and turn it into a pad. For example, that ride. Let's take this. Let's select a part of it. You create a very interesting thing from this. Whoops, don't touch that. Pads don't always have to be that pretty sound either. Pads can be like they're just back there to just whatever element you need in your song to fill up space. That pad is going to do that, but you're going to need to be a bit creative on how it just does that. Sometimes it's not going to be a nice, pretty sound. So sometimes you want something that's just... I use that all the time. Those kinds of sounds are very useful. Now we could go back and forth. That's an interesting deal right there. Okay, it's This is going to be one of those sounds that's not a chord. Distortion would be interesting. So that's an interesting one. Now let's create another one. Let's go in Harmor. Let's use a square. Let's play up an octave. Some people will just call that a pad. They'll call them chord leads. I call them chord leads or whatever, but. So if you use it the correct way, it could be considered a pad. And I want to really, to me, a pad sort of does this just intuitively, but. Let's edit the articulator. Let's add a low pass rise in. We do something like this. Create a really long build. And then on the EQ, we could still got that clarinet feel. Okay, let's harmonic level. It's essentially another EQ. Okay, and let's add some of this. I want it to be a high pass. I like it. So these are some ideas for some pads. Now, of course, in your track, it's going to vary from time to time, but these are sort of the basic blanket ideas for making pads. There are additional options. You can see the sample you drag. For example, if we drag a vocal sample into our thing, it will sound substantially different than that weird hi-hat sample I dragged. So let's go to vocals, deep voice. No, let's not get that one. There's one in Pax vocals. Baby. Everyone goes for these, man. Everyone knows about these. What you do is you create an envelope, volume envelope for this. And you select a spot. See, it's kind of an interesting deal if you do really small. So I just changed the speed. And, okay, let's go to the FX. Keep flipping through menus. Go back to the image, change the speed. Okay, so let's come in here. Give it some. So you see, you can do some pretty fast stuff, especially with the image options here. And we haven't even gotten into posts, it's just general ideas. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.